Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Rines Report here on Radio Free Radford.com. Here live in the Radio Free Radford Studio in Highlander Student Media offices, Tyler 025. I am your host, Tristan Blake Rines, and we were supposed to have special co-host today, Terrence Schofield. Wasn't really able to communicate with him today. If you're watching this on the Facebook live stream, like I said earlier, I haven't been able to get a hold of him quite yet. But we're hoping that Terrence will be able to make an appearance today. I'm not exactly sure what's going on with him, but we still will be able to put out a full hour of show today for you, our valued listeners, and we thank you so much for joining us here in the studio. Now, follow Radio Free Radford on social media. Their Twitter at Radio Free Raddy, Instagram and Facebook when you search Radio Free Radford. Now, also give us a like on Facebook. Catch us going live every Friday at 11 a.m. We have all sorts of amazing sports topics. Facebook's a little wonky. I used to be able to share posts from other sources and get information out to the amazing followers I have on that page. But Facebook's kind of wonky. They don't let you share everything you want on pages. So if the social media looks a little dry outside of our regular live streams, then I don't know what to tell you. That's a Facebook thing. So, but we are, of course, streaming live on the Rines Report Facebook page, so go give us a like on there. And like I said, tune in every Friday at 11 a.m. We got a number of topics to cover today. Of course, right now, it's March, so what are we going to talk about? March Madness. Now, that's why I really wish Terrence was in the studio with us. I know he's a passionate Duke fan. I know that there's a lot of speculative and considerable opponents ahead of them, and that this is going to be quite an interesting tournament. Right now, my tournament bracket is doing all right. I mean, yesterday I only missed 3 games. I'm in a bracket pool with a few other friends of mine, some colleagues, and right now I'm sitting around second place. One of my colleagues actually was pretty much perfect until, what game was it yesterday? Wofford beat until Wofford beat Seton Hall. But I had also picked Seton Hall too, so it's all right. No one has a perfect bracket. I'm pretty sure there are only 24 left, according to ESPN, that are still perfect up to this point. So who knows? Somebody out there could still very well hit the odds, go in their favor. The 1 in 9.2 quintillion chance of getting a correct bracket. I mean, in the words of what was his name? From Dumb and Dumber. So you're saying there's a chance? But I want to talk a little bit about March Madness. I have Duke over UNC in the championship. I'm going to put that out there first. I also want to say I try to follow what I can as far as college basketball goes. I want to say there are a number of interesting teams this year in the tournament, and there's one team I want to highlight that could very well be the earlier upset team over Duke. Now, Duke's got North Dakota State in the first round, the round of 64. Then their next opponent would either be VCU or UCF. In my bracket, I've got UCF going into the next round versus Duke. But then upcoming, I've got the local team, Virginia Tech, as the next up-and-coming for Duke. Now, here's the thing. Virginia Tech, without Justin Robinson, beat Duke without Zion Williamson in Virginia Tech in their home court. And I think it's considerable to think about this, though. The Virginia Tech has to deal with certain things as far as rotation-wise. How involved is Justin Robinson going to be? How much of a factor can he really be in the game, even just versus St. Louis? Not even to get too far ahead of ourselves. They have still to beat St. Louis. They either have a matchup against Mississippi State and Liberty, and then they'd foreseeably be seeing Duke in the Sweet 16. Now, this Virginia Tech team, like I said, has beaten Duke once already this season. They have some information on them. They understand how to play them. And obviously we're successful in taking them down in Hokie Nation and Castle Coliseum. And I'm just really curious to see if Virginia Tech can make a surprise run. I wouldn't necessarily call Virginia Tech a Cinderella team. They are a number 4 seed coming out of the East. But keep an eye out on Virginia Tech. But I will say my champion for the NCAA this year is going to be Duke. They're an overall favorite. They've got a ton of talent. They got Barrett. They have Cam Reddish. They got Of course, Zion Williamson. They have a lot of amazing talent. They got probably the best coach in college basketball, if not college basketball history, on their side, Coach Krzyzewski. And I would still consider them to be the favorite. ESPN, by the numbers, I saw a video they had put out, said that UNC should be favorited to win the NCAA tournament based on a number of factors. My matchup is going to be UNC versus Duke. They battled it out a number of times. 3 times during the course of the season, once in the tournament, the ACC tournament, and Duke was victorious in the ACC tournament. But during the regular season, Duke had lost Zion Williamson in their first matchup, I believe, versus UNC very early on in the game. Within the first few minutes, the $thousands matchup, you know what I mean, paying for tickets like $2,500. And then afterwards, they didn't have him for the second matchup. I think Zion Williamson is, of course, the biggest factor in this game. I think that in that potential matchup. So, but my key matchup for the championship is Duke over UNC in the national championship. Like I said, the odds of getting a perfect bracket are 1 in 9.2 quintillion. And after one day, I already missed on Louisville, Wofford, and Murray State, and I'm sure I'm going to miss plenty more. But March Madness is going to keep going. I'm really excited to see where things go. As soon as I finish here in the studio, I'm going to go right back out into the student media, I guess would be our common area, and I'll be watching college basketball until I head out of here. So, it's March Madness time, ladies and gentlemen. There's plenty of basketball to go around. If you don't want to watch, let's see, who are the marquee matchups today? I mean, we got the Virginia Tech versus St. Louis game later on around 10 p.m. tonight. We've got some interesting matchups coming out of the West. You got Texas Tech, Kentucky, Buffalo, Arizona State. Out in the South, the Midwest, Iowa State and Ohio State, Houston, Georgia State. You got some interesting matchups today. I'm really curious. If anybody wants to know what my Cinderella team is, I've got UC Irvine on a whim. Like I said, not the biggest college basketball guy, but I will be taking UC Irvine as my Cinderella team. I think they'll lose to Virginia in the Sweet 16, but it's going to be interesting. Like I said, I'm not a basketball guru here. I'm not going to pretend like I have all the answers for you. I have a very elementary version of understanding for these things. I'm no way an expert on college basketball, but it's fun to participate. It's fun to keep an interest, of course, in this huge tournament. Probably one of the biggest tournaments, one of the biggest spectacles in sports year round. I would put it up there. I'd put it up there against, like Daytona 500. I'd put it up there with the Super Bowl. Like I said, March Madness is, of course, up there. If you have any other ideas of some amazing... I just want to get like a broad ranking of major sports spectacles, and I want the people out there to vote on it. I want to see who the people... We're going to go democratically. Who do the people think, or what event do the people think is the biggest event in sports on a year basis? I mean, you got the Masters as well. You have some interesting UFC events, but I wouldn't say there's any supreme UFC event that is an annual thing. I mean, there's always some big fights every year, but there's not like a consistent annual, like on April 2nd, they fight in Las Vegas and all the championships are on stake and blah, blah. It's not like WrestleMania with the WWE. So, I'm just really curious to see where this thing goes, man. I'm hoping I could win my, I can win my pool here with my group, my colleagues. Even here in the student media office, we aren't betting money or anything like that, but we do have some people that have also put up brackets as well. A lot of them have Duke or UNC. I think I saw one with LSU on a coin flip chart. So just some interesting brackets out there. Now, when we come back, we will be talking, of course, about my favorite time of the NFL offseason, NFL free agency. If you're not as hype about NFL free agency as I am, I think you're missing out. There's a lot that goes into it. There are a lot of people that have moved and shifted around this offseason, and there's plenty to talk about. And shame on Terrence for not being here to chat about it with me. So, we'll be right back here in about 30 seconds or so, right here on RadioFreeRadford.com. Stay tuned in, stick around, follow them on social media. We'll be right back.
We're back, and better than ever. Radio Free Radford.
Ready? Realize what I'm about to say.
Come on! Go!
everybody. This is Natalie Laro.
Hey, what's up? It's Brianna.
What up, y'all? This is Jeremiah.
Radford's new choice of music. RadioFreeRadford.com.
Welcome here into the Radio Free Radford Studio. I am the host of the Rines Report, Tristan Blake Rines. And if you aren't following me on social media, I think you're missing out. If the people out there listening on Facebook Live on the Radio Free Radford Facebook stream, I'll be sharing it up there as well. If you're not listening on the Rines Report Facebook stream, you got to be checking us out, man. You're missing out. And if for some reason you stumbled upon the show one way or another, I really appreciate you listening. I really appreciate you giving me a little bit of, a little bit of confidence, knowing that some people out there like to listen to me on the internets. And thank you so much for tuning in. So, free agency. NFL free agency. I'm so happy. I'm really excited. Like, I wish I could have been around while these stories were breaking. A lot of the major stuff that has happened has already come and gone, and I feel really bad. I was in New York, and I missed a show right before spring break, so we missed 2 shows in a row due to outside forces, and I'm not happy about it, but, we're still going to report on it. It's my favorite thing to talk about in the NFL offseason, and we're going to dive right into it. I have my biggest signings. I had my biggest trades. A number of players have moved around this offseason. It's been incredibly active. A lot of teams have oversigned guys, have gotten some good bargains on players. I feel like there are a couple of really big signings out there that have been, not that the players weren't talented, but I feel like there are some guys who got a little overpaid. And one of those guys being Landon Collins. Like I said, I love Landon Collins, but a 6-year, $86 million deal to the Redskins. I know he's passionate about the Redskins. I know his favorite player is Sean Taylor. He's a Redskins fan growing up because of Sean Taylor. And good for him. All due respect to Landon Collins. But $86 million? That's an outrageously high number. It's a long deal as well. I really hope he lives up to the potential the Redskins feel like he has. I feel like also, where did it go? I want to make sure I get the numbers correct for you guys out there. Where is it? Yeah, Trey Flowers to the Lions signed for like $16 million per season, something like that. The Lions keep picking up these guys that are leaving New England and offering them ridiculously big contracts. They went out and got Danny Amendola. They went out and got Trey Flowers just this offseason. Guys are going to play with Patricia, and I mean, good for them. Let's see. The base salary, yeah, he'll be making 11, 14, 16, and 16 over the course of the next 4 years. A huge cap hit. That's a lot of money, man. He signed a 4-year, it looks like $90 million contract. That's a lot of money. But the dude only produced he signed a 5-year, $90 million contract. He only produced 7.5 sacks this last season. I'm pretty sure that for that kind of money, I would see like an Ndamukong Suh attached to it. I would see maybe even a Justin Houston who got released by the Chiefs and just recently, yesterday, was actually signed by the Indianapolis Colts on a 2 years, $24 million. I'm sorry, I'm simplifying things a little bit too much, but I didn't expect that much money for Trey Flowers. I thought he was going to stick around in New England as well, but good for him, man. I mean, I'm always in the favor of the players. Like, I understand, like, hey, dude, go get your money, man. It's a business. This thing doesn't last forever. Make the money. Not everybody gets contracts like this. So when you have these opportunities, I praise players. I'm like, yeah, go for it, man. Trent Brown, I feel like and all due respect to Trent Brown, I love Trent Brown a lot. Like, I liked him a lot with New England. I thought he was pretty solid in San Francisco. And the Raiders went out and made him the highest paid offensive tackle in NFL history with a 4-year, $66 million contract, $36.75 guaranteed. That's a ton of money. And I would say his premier season was just this past season with the New England Patriots. He's a big 6'8", like 300-something pound offensive tackle. Like I said, I like Trent Brown a lot. I've even like had very short exchanges with him over Instagram every once in a while. Send him like some praise, like, hey man, like what you're doing out there, or like congrats on winning a championship, congrats on the contract. And he likes my stuff, or once upon a time he messaged me back. But I wanted to put that out there just for my context. But I was a little shocked to see that he was the highest of all time. I don't know, like I imagine that kind of stuff with like what's the dude's name out of Dallas? Right, why am I forgetting his name? He's like my Tyron Smith. Yeah, I love Tyron Smith. He's been a little inconsistent these last couple of years. He's been dealing with some injuries, but Tyron Smith's a beast. I would have expected that coming out of Dallas, maybe. Just a few guys that I think have been a little overpaid, but I mean, good for them. Like I said, I'm always in favor of guys, making money, dude. Go secure the bag, man. I do not blame you. Now, some big names, some big signings. I want to talk about the top 5 signings, and I guess I'll go based on impact for their respective teams. Okay, that's how I'm kind of gauging this. That's how I'm going to move forward with this topic. So just for context, it's for impact and not necessarily just because they made the most money. All right, so number 5 is a 1-year, $13 million contract. And Devin Funchess to the Indianapolis Colts. I love this signing. I love this signing for the Colts. I think Funchess is making a ton of money. I think there's some incentives that bring him to $13 million, but that was the number I initially saw. I think it's closer to like around $10 million, but if there's some more incentives around there. But I like Devin Funchess in Carolina. I thought he was a pretty solid receiver. I really like him going to Indianapolis. Andrew Luck's got a big arm. His best receiver his entire career has been T.Y. Hilton. But you get a guy like Devin Funchess who's like 6'4", 6'5", got a huge wingspan, and is able to make some really good contested catches against NFL cover safeties. I like Devin Funchess to Indianapolis a lot. I think that he adds an extra dimension to that offense. He gets Andrew Luck a little bit more of a secure weapon going in the field, especially in the red zone, and their offense is going to look nasty. I mean, you got Marlon Mack, who was a really solid running back down the stretch for them. The offensive line just keeps getting better and better, as we saw with big Quentin Nelson. I think that, and Ryan Kelly, also a former first-round pick, coming into his own a little bit. Excuse me. Let's see. Of course, T.Y. Hilton. You've got Andrew Luck, of course, on that offense. And then you got some role players as well that have been able to contribute. I really like this signing by the Colts. I think it's going to be very beneficial to them. I think his presence there alone adds to the... oh, yeah, of course, Eric Ebron. I wanted to make sure because I love Eric Ebron, too. I think their offense is going to get a little bit better. I think he adds an extra red zone dimension. I don't know if Eric Ebron gets, like 14 touchdowns this season, but their offense is going to be interesting to watch coming out of the AFC South, and their competition being the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Houston Texans, and respectively the Tennessee Titans defenses, all pretty solid, steady defenses. You got to be able to compete and, of course, be able to, overtake your opponents. Number 4 on my list, I love the C.J. Mosley signing to the New York Jets. While I think that they paid him a ton of money, which they did, $85 million for 5 years with a 51 guarantee. I think that he helps bolster this defense the Jets are bringing in. They have Adam Gase, who's a new head coach in New York. He was a former head coach of the Miami Dolphins. He was okay in Miami. I wouldn't necessarily say that he did anything stellar, but I would also consider the offense he was working with. But I like the C.J. Mosley signing a lot. It gives you a field general right there in the middle. That defensive line is pretty solid. You got Leonard Williams, who's, of course, a beast. I would consider him to be one of the better defensive tackles in the NFL. They got Stephen McClendon, who's not a bad defensive tackle at all. So they got some talent down there on the defensive line. The secondary with Jamal Adams is going to get even better. I'm sure they're going to go a little more defensive heavy in the draft. They'll probably get a few weapons for Sam Darnold in the offense, and we will be talking about him a little bit more later. Number 3, one of my favorite signings, I love Earl Thomas to Baltimore. Now, Baltimore lost some players. They really did lose some players. But Earl Thomas is probably one of, if not the best safety in the NFL when healthy. I mean, last season, of course, was kind of an anomaly, and he messed his leg up. But he's going to come out there. He got paid 4 years, $52.5 million. I love the Earl Thomas signing to Baltimore. They had cut Eric Weddle. I think he plays a similar role to Eric Weddle. He essentially is going to be one of the generals in that defense. Now losing C.J. Mosley, the Ravens have some more holes to fill. They got to get some more pass rushers. They lost Terrell Suggs. They lost to Darius Smith. They lost C.J. Mosley now. They gave up Eric Weddle. So getting Earl Thomas is at least a big step in the right direction. That secondary is going to be really interesting with him, Marlon Humphrey, I believe Tyvon Young, I believe is how you say, I think is his name. They got some interesting guys in that secondary. I really like where they're going. Baltimore's still going to have a good defense, but it's going to be more on the back end instead of more than likely the front end, getting to the quarterback. But who knows? There's a lot of defensive presence in this upcoming draft. We can see them making some moves, try to move up, maybe go get some more key pass rushers. Number 2 on my list of biggest free agent signings. I love Tyrann Mathieu to the Chiefs. Another safety pickup. 3 years, $42 million, and you're helping the defense. They lost Justin Houston and Dee Ford. So those are 2 really big names that they gave up or they traded, whatever you want to, see it as, whatever the facts are. Tyrann Mathieu, and they let go of Eric Berry too. So 3 key defensive players, but at least are making up a little bit with Tyrann Mathieu signing. Like I said, this is a big defensive draft. They still got Chris Jones, who's a really effective defensive interior rusher. I liked him a lot. Their defense was not nearly as good as it should have been last season. They're going to get a new defensive coordinator coming in. I think the offense is still going to be really good. Of course, Pat Mahomes looks like a mainstay. I mean, you throw 50 touchdowns in your first full season starting, you win the MVP. The kid's going to keep going places. All right, let's just say that. One of the most talented quarterbacks I've ever seen. But Tyrann Mathieu, I like the pickup. It at least shows you're still trying to invest in the defense. I'm going to see them going really heavy after some more players. And Ndamukong Suh's still in the market. So they go get Ndamukong Suh and Chris Jones, combine that one up in the middle. I like that pickup. But Tyrann Mathieu to the Chiefs, underrated. Let's see. And number 1, as far as impact goes, I love Nick Foles to the Jags. I said we were going to talk about him plenty. And there are other players who deserve to be on this list as well. But I think Nick Foles to the Jacksonville Jaguars, 4 years, $88 million, is a lot of money. Let's not be mistaken here. That's a lot of cheddar. That's $22 million a year. I can't remember what the guarantee number was. I want to say it was like $51 million. $88 million for 4 years, though. I think he's better than Blake Bortles. I think that Foles gets them closer to the end goal. If he is as good, if he's even 3/4 of what he was in Philadelphia with Jacksonville, I think that Jacksonville makes a good push to the playoffs. Their defense needs to show up this season, but it needs to be energized by that offense. That's really the keys to the Jacksonville Jaguars. If the offense is striking, the defense has a little bit of extra energy. They're like, all right, look, we can win this game. All we got to do is shut down, blah blah blah. We can do it because there was a game last year they should have won. They won a game like 6-3, I believe, and then they also lost a game 6-3. So as long as Nick Foles is getting a little more acclimated with that offense, they got Leonard Fournette. The offensive line isn't horrible from what I understand. You got some good young receivers. I like Keelan Cole. So I can imagine the Jaguars are probably going to go out. They could take a risk and get one of these receivers in the draft. You got DK, of course. You got N'Keal Harry, Butler coming out of Iowa State. You got, what's his name, Ridley out of Georgia. There's a few receivers in this draft that I'm keeping my eye on. I think could be really good impact players. We're going to talk a little more in depth about them as we get closer to the draft. But I like Nick Foles to the Jags. I think it's the biggest signing of the offseason, of course. And of course, Le'Veon Bell getting signed by the Jets is a huge deal too. I do want to mention that as well. It's in my top 10, but I only wanted to put in 5 right now. We're going to be talking about big trades here in just a moment. I went on for about 15 minutes alone talking about these signings. So stick around. In about 20 seconds, we'll be getting back talking about some of these big trades and what do they mean for their respective teams.
Love it. Your new favorite station.
You like it, I love it. You like it, I love it. This is your man, Flo Rida.
All the hits. The New River Valley's hit station. RFR. Radio Free Radford.
Welcome back into the Rines Report here in the Radio Free Radford Studio. It's a little bit of a colder day here in Radford, I'm not going to lie. I might sound a little congested, so if I sound a little funny coming through the radio waves, or if you're listening to this later on YouTube, if I sound a little funny, I apologize. But we got plenty to talk about today. We're almost at the halfway point of the show, a quick hour coming out of the Radio Free Radford Studio. Be sure to follow us on social media. I keep plugging it because I'm really passionate about it. Follow us on Facebook when you search The Rines Report, Rines spelled R-I-N-E-S. This is the final semester of shows as well, so get them while they're hot, because they ain't going to be around forever. unless my wildest dreams come true. And ESPN comes knocking at the door, and they're like, hey, we want to give you an hour. Because that would be ridiculous, right? But no, thank you guys so much for tuning in, listening to the show today. I'm here, of course, in the Radio Free Radford Studio, so I got to do a service and tell you guys to follow them on social media. When you go on Twitter, search at Radio Free Raddy, and Instagram and Facebook when you search up Radio Free Radford. Thank you guys so much for the support. Now, we got big trades to talk about. I'm really excited. Like I said, I love the NFL offseason. I love free agency. There's a lot to talk about. I missed like 2-3 weeks of being able to talk to you guys. So we got big trades. Number one, we're going to talk about it first because it's the biggest trade. Odell Beckham Jr. to the Cleveland Browns. The Giants got a first, a third, and Jabril Peppers to fill in a safety spot for them from the Browns to get Odell Beckham Jr. You know who wins this trade? Baker Mayfield. Because now their offense is going to be David Njoku, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, whatever you feel about him. It's going to be Jarvis Landry. It's going to be Odell Beckham, David Njoku. The offensive line is getting better and better, even though they traded Kevin Zeitler to the Giants. You know, I like Kevin Zeitler, but they got some good players on that offensive line. The defense is getting better. We're going to talk a little bit more about who won free agency so far, but I did want to address this trade. I think Baker Mayfield's a big winner here. Freddie Kitchens gets some even better players on the offensive side of the ball. If the Cleveland Browns have let me just start with this. Cleveland Browns have a lot of expectations, but I love the trade. I like Odell in Cleveland. He's back in tandem with Jarvis Landry like they were at LSU, and they were ridiculously interesting. They were ridiculous to watch at LSU. I've seen the highlights. I've seen the tape. They work well together. They're like brothers, man. That's a tandem right there you don't want to mess with. And, of course, you got Antonio Callaway as your slot. I'd love Antonio Callaway if he was my slot receiver. Dude's got wheels. Number 2, right behind it, you got another receiver going to a different team, Antonio Brown to the Oakland Raiders. I almost forgot that I was gone, and I couldn't tell you guys about this one. Because it happened right as I got back into Radford, coming back from New York. New York was fun, by the way. I want to mention that. Quick little plug. But I got right back, and I'm looking at my phone. It's like, Antonio Brown's going to be a Raider. The Steelers only got a third and a fifth for him. I think the Raiders definitely win this trade. We'll talk a little bit more about the Steelers and all their drama and stuff later, but I like this trade a lot for Derek Carr. I think that the Raiders have an even better offense. I'll be talking more about some of the other additions they made, of course, a little more in-depth in the next segment. But Antonio Brown to the Oakland Raiders, for now, the Oakland Raiders. Huge pickup. I like it a lot. Number three, not as flashy. Kind of a result of the one prior that I was just talking about. Kelechi Osemele to the New York Jets, along with a 6th-round pick. And Oakland got a 5th-round pick. This was a salary cap move. Now, it's a salary cap move, but it gives Sam Darnold a little more security on that offensive line. Kelechi Osemele is a former Pro Bowler. I loved Kelechi Osemele coming out of Baltimore. I thought he was really good in Oakland during his time there. And he's a really good run blocker, if I remember correctly. I don't think he's declined at all. I haven't heard anything saying that he's declined. I like Kelechi a lot, and I think that this helps Sam Darnold. If you're investing in your quarterback while he's still affordable, and while you can still put other guys on the roster, you get guys like a Kelechi Osemele, you keep building the offensive line, and then you try to go out and compete against the Patriots, the Dolphins, and the Bills in the same division. Number 4, Michael Bennett of the Patriots. And this might sound because I'm a Patriots fan. I'm not going to deny that. It sounds a little bit like I'm being a homer to the Patriots. But I think this is a good move. I don't think Michael Bennett costs that much in comparison to what they would have had to sign Trey Flowers for, $16 million a season. I think that New England adds to that pass rush. Michael Bennett, to me, is around the 7.5 sack mark. He's cheaper. He's a veteran, and I think he's going to work really well in the Belichick defense. Philadelphia got a 5th-round pick from New England. Michael Bennett and a 7th along to New England, so they didn't lose any picks getting him. Michael Bennett's a veteran leader. You know, he's going to have to make up a few of these relationships with the Patriots. You know, he's had a little bit of tiffs in the past with Patriot players. But I think as long as he's there, really ready to work, he's going to work really well in that defense. That's a defense that as long as the pass rush is going, that secondary will take over the game. Devin McCourty, Jason McCourty's coming back. Stephon Gilmore, probably the best corner in football last season. J.C. Jackson's on his way up. They got Jonathan Jones, who's a really fast guy. I like him a lot. I've said that on the show a few times. I love Jonathan Jones. So they got some really talented guys in the secondary. Their linebacking core is really strong. They got Juwan Bentley, who looked really good last year while he was on the field. He suffered a neck injury against Detroit, didn't come back for the remainder of the season. They got Dante Hightower, Kyle Van Noy, who's one of the most underrated players in football. So the Michael Bennett trade to the Patriots, really effective. The Patriots don't have a lot of money left in their cap space, though. So I'm just really curious to see what happens going forward. Not a bunch of big signings, just retaining some players, bringing in some complimentary players as well. And number 5, Dee Ford to San Francisco. Yeah, San Francisco, my bad. I didn't even pronounce the last S there. All due respect to the city. Anyway, Kansas City got a 2020 second-round pick for Dee Ford, who had a breakout year last year. Dee Ford, coming out of Auburn, was a first-round pick for them, if I'm not mistaken. Had a really big year this last year. The Chiefs, I guess, decided they didn't want to, slap a bunch of money on him. So the 49ers we'll trade for him and we'll sign him to a 5-year, $87.5 million deal. So Dee Ford's getting paid out in the Bay. All right, I like this trade a lot, and the reason why is you're adding to the team that's going to be led by Jimmy Garoppolo. We forget, Jimmy Garoppolo tore his ACL last year. The season prior, he didn't lose a single game as a 49er quarterback, and this team got better. The Niners are in another key spot in the draft. They're at number 2, I believe? Number 2 in the draft. They have an opportunity to get Nick Bosa if all things are pointing at the Arizona Cardinals getting Kyler Murray, the Heisman winner. It could happen. I wouldn't be surprised. So imagine Dee Ford, Solomon Thomas, Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, DeForest Buckner, Cassius Marsh coming off the edge. I got feelings about him, but he's not bad. That's going to be a steady... And they also got Quan Alexander as well. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. They made some moves. They have a really good front seven. They got Richard Sherman on the back end. If they just keep building that secondary and some of that linebacking core, they're going to have a really nice defense in the NFC West. So those are the biggest trades that happened. We got a few more topics to cover today on the show. We still got a little bit more, around half an hour left of showtime remaining. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be back here in about 30 seconds with more of the Rines Report.
We're back, and better than ever. Radio Free Radford.
Ready? Realize what I'm about to say.
Come on! Go! Playing what you want to hear. RFR.
I'm Ellie Golding.
Hey everybody, this is Natalie Laro.
Hey, what's up? It's Brianna.
What up, y'all? This is Jeremiah.
Radford's new choice of music. RadioFreeRadford.com.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Rines Report here on RadioFreeRadford.com. It is a lovely-ish Friday here in Radford, Virginia. A little bit windy when I'm looking out the window, but, we're inside. It's a little cozy in here. I'm in the studio by myself. I thought Terrence Schofield would be here. He does a wonderful program with Radio Free Radford. I'm not discounting the work he does. Things happen. We're students. Sometimes you just can't make it into the studio. I'm just hoping for a little more communication next time. So if you guys see Terrence, tell him to shoot me a text. Although I just hope that he's doing okay, though. So back into this amazing program we call the Rines Report here on RadioFreeRadford.com. I got some winners and some losers from NFL free agency. Like I said, it's going to be a pretty heavy NFL offseason show today, this week. We had plenty to cover, and I really wanted to talk about it. My internship didn't want to let me talk about it on the air because, I'm a little more local programming. And I respect that. I'm having a lot of fun with them, by the way. I love the show I'm working with. Tim Donnelly's show over on WRAD, but they're covering more local sports. I'm just a big NFL nut. That's why I do the podcast here. And hey, but go check them out. I'm working with WRAD with the New River Radio Group, and they'll be remoting live from McLean's today. So check them out. Shoot the Tim Donnelly show a like on Facebook as well. So having a lot of fun with them, but they want to stick a little bit more to the the Redskins, the Panthers, Virginia Tech, sports in general, some Radford stuff here. So I really appreciate all the programming and the work they let me do. I've learned a lot with them, having a lot of fun. But who won free agency so far? Also these topics might be a little dated, but whatever. Who won free agency so far? I got a top 5 list, of course. We're going through lists today. Number 1, of course, Cleveland Browns. Even outside of the Odell Beckham signing, they made some other key additions. They had also traded for Olivier Vernon from the New York Giants. I loved the Sheldon Richardson pickup. He's been a pretty effective player over the course of his career. Good pass rushing defensive tackle. And this gives them a defensive rotation of Myles Garrett, who's a premier pass rusher in the league right now. He's only in like his 3rd or 4th year, I believe. Beast coming out of Texas A&M. I like Myles Garrett a lot. Sheldon Richardson, Olivier Vernon. So you got 3 really good pass rushers, but it's not even over with. You got Ogunjobi, Emmanuel Agba as well. So you got a 5-man rotation of guys that can get after the quarterback and play some good run stuff. I really like what the Browns are doing. They're making big moves. They also went out and they got Kareem Hunt. He's suspended for 8 games. Take it however you will, I suppose. But the Browns made some interesting and helpful to the team moves as far as personnel goes. So the pressure is literally just sitting right on Freddie Kitchens. Number 2, the Oakland Raiders, of course. Antonio Brown, Trent Brown, LaMarcus Joyner, Tyrell Williams, all some really key pickups by the Oakland Raiders. I like the Tyrell Williams pickup as well. He's a good complement to Antonio Brown. He's a little bit longer receiver, and I think that gives Derek Carr some better options to throw the ball to outside of just Andre Roberts, who's a really good return man. But last year they struggled a lot. Trent Brown, of course, like I said, I like Trent Brown a lot. So I think the Raiders made some really good additions. The New York Jets are number 3 on my list. I already talked about C.J. Mosley and Kelechi Osemele. They also went out and got Jamison Crowder. I think it's an effective pickup. You have Robbie Anderson and Anunwa as the primary receivers. You have Herndon, I believe, at tight end as well. You got some good younger talent. And Sam Darnold needs more guys around him. Right now, he's a little more cheap. You can sign guys to $85 million contracts and not have to look back at them and say, hey, this isn't manageable. Because right now, Sam Darnold's still within the first 4 or 5 years of his deal, and he's not making $27 million a season. So the Jets are building their team around a young quarterback. I think Sam Darnold can make a good next step. San Francisco. I like the Quan Alexander and the D Ford and the Tevin Coleman signings. Tevin Coleman, you just get some more depth. Matt Breida looks like a pretty solid running back option for them. Fantasy owners who had picked him up really liked Matt Breida a lot. I like the Tevin Coleman signing. He's a good complementary running back. We saw what he could do with Devontae Freeman in Atlanta, so I liked that signing. Quan Alexander coming off of I believe an ACL injury, a leg injury, and they signed him to a lot of money. The Quan Alexander deal, 4 years, $54 million. It's a lot of money, considerably, but Quan Alexander was one of my favorite linebackers a few years ago. He can fly and get to the ball. I'm hoping that the ACL didn't take anything off of his game, but if he's playing to that level once again in San Francisco, I like the signing a lot. D Ford's going to go out there and complement that entire pass rushing defensive line really, really well. So I really like that signing a lot. And then Chicago. They went out and got HaHa Clinton-Dix, Mike Davis, who's a good running back coming out of Seattle, and they went out and got a Swiss Army man in Cordarrelle Patterson. Swiss Army knife, I guess. Swiss Army man, that was a weird movie. Cordarrelle Patterson, you saw the kind of roles that he played with the Patriots, running back, kick returner. I think he did a little bit of punt returning. I think there was one play where they threw him in at safety or something funny like that. And, obviously wide receiver. So I don't think it was a bad pickup by Chicago at all to get him. Mike Davis was a pretty solid, if I remember, a ground and pound kind of guy for Seattle. And HaHa Clinton-Dix is a good cover safety. In today's NFL, especially that defense is going to keep getting better and better anyway. But in today's NFL, if you can cover tight ends, if you can cover wide receivers pretty well, it adds a ton. And that pass rush in Chicago is no joke. I love that move, getting HaHa Clinton-Dix. Like I said, Mike Davis and Cordarrelle Patterson by the Bears. Matt Nagy's he's looking to go to the Super Bowl. He ain't wasting no time. They're trying to build the best squad they possibly can around Mitch Trubisky. Now, there are 3 teams I have that are kind of on the lower end of NFL free agency. The losers of NFL free agency. The Steelers, I'm kind of speculative about it. And I'll tell you a little bit more about it later. we will touch on it. They are the number 3 team on here, and it's only reason why is because they lost Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, 2 big contributors on their roster, but they did make some other signings as well. So I wouldn't necessarily say they lost completely, but we will have to see this upcoming season how big of an impact not having both of those players actually has on the team. Last year without Le'Veon Bell, they didn't even make the playoffs, even though James Conner was a marvelous addition. So we'll have to see what happens. The Giants are on my list. It seems like they're trying to burden themselves with Eli Manning, and unless they go out and get Dwayne Haskins, I think they lost the offseason. That's just my personal opinion. You don't get a quarterback that's going to follow up Eli. You can get Daniel Jones, Will Grier, Dwayne Haskins. If Murray for some reason doesn't go to Arizona, you can get Kyler Murray probably sitting around there at 6 or 7. Or you could trade up to the Jets, try to make some more moves. There's a number of interesting quarterback prospects this year in the draft. And if the Giants do not get themselves a quarterback of the future, I will say it right now, they lost this offseason completely. Of course, trading away Odell Beckham Jr., Olivier Vernon, and they lost Landon Collins in free agency. I think Landon Collins is probably their best defensive player. Janoris Jenkins has been a really good addition for the player for them as well, all due respect. But I liked Landon Collins a lot. He was an Offensive Player of the Year candidate like a few years ago. Has been a steady player for them as far as I understand. Olivier Vernon was one of their best pass rushers. I couldn't really tell you anybody else in that roster who was doing more than him. And Odell Beckham Jr. is still Odell Beckham Jr. So if you're burdening yourself with Eli Manning, I kind of feel bad for Saquon Barkley. Because that means the offense is essentially going to run through you. Because it doesn't seem like Eli Manning's throwing 40-yard passes to Sterling Shepard. It just doesn't seem like it's happening. Then the Ravens. They lost to Darius Smith, Terrell Suggs, Eric Weddle, like I said, C.J. Mosley. They lost a bunch of key addition players on their defense. Number 1 defense in football lost 4 players. They got Earl Thomas back, or they added Earl Thomas to fill in that safety role, but they've still got some glaring holes on the outside edges and on the interior of the entire defense, the center of the defense, the middle linebacker spot. So, just saying, the Ravens are going to be an interesting team to watch. Of course, you got Lamar Jackson on the offense, but the Ravens, as a team overall, have a lot of work left to do. So, with that being said, we got about 15 more minutes left here inside the Radio Free Radford Studio this week, but we're going to hit you with a 20-second ad here on RadioFreeRadford.com. Stick around. We're going to talk about second-year players ready to make the next big leap.
Love it. Your new favorite station.
You like it, I love it. You like it, I love it. This is your man, Flo Rida.
All the hits. The New River Valley's hit station. RFR. Radio Free Radford.
Welcome into the Radio Free Radford Studio. That was some weird pacing I just did there. Welcome back into the Radio Free Radford Studio here on the Rines Report. I'm your host, Tristan Blake Rines. Make sure to follow Radio Free Radford on social media. If you're listening to the podcast right now on RadioFreeRadford.com, I really appreciate you. You're the best person in the world. I promise you. So, which second-year players are ready to take the next big step? Who's ready to make that big leap in their careers this upcoming season? I've got about 8 players spotlighted. Some of these names you probably really familiar with if you're a big NFL fan like myself. And we're going to start off, I think I'm going to go from 1 to 8. We're going to go top down. Baker Mayfield, of course. He's really familiar with his new head coach and Freddie Kitchens, the offensive coordinator from last season. Freddie Kitchens has the most pressure this upcoming year, I believe, with the amount of talent that they have. They have a stacked amount of talent. Division is a little bit weaker. The Steelers, coming off of a season where they didn't even make the playoffs, they barely squeaked out, but they didn't make it in. The Ravens squeaked in with a number 1 overall defense, but their offense seems a little bit hit or miss. Lamar Jackson's talented, but I think that he needs to figure out these turnover issues. I think he had the most turnovers within the span of him starting games. The NFL playoffs, the wild card round, definitely did not help his stock at all. But the Ravens are moving forward with him. So, Baker Mayfield in a division that's a little bit weaker. Like I said, the Ravens defense had some losses. The Bengals are still the Bengals. Nothing spectacular coming out of Cincinnati anytime soon, in my opinion. Let's see. Pittsburgh, I mean, I guess they made some additions, but I couldn't necessarily tell you anything major that they did besides lose Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown. So it's going to be up to Big Ben and Juju Smith-Schuster and James Conner and that offensive line. The defense is still going to be solid. I think the biggest contender they have is Pittsburgh. But right now, a lot of people are putting a lot of stock into the Cleveland Browns, but let's just be cautious. But all that being said, I think that Cleveland has a good shot to go from, I wouldn't say they're worse in the division, but they're going to have a shot to go to the playoffs this upcoming year. If everything goes right, not a lot of players get injured on their side, they have a good shot. Number 2, Saquon Barkley. And I have a Dwayne Haskins with a question mark next to it because I think that's who they need to go get. If they don't go get him, whatever quarterback they end up drafting, I'm pretty sold they're going to get a quarterback in the draft this year. Whether it's Dwayne Haskins or Daniel Jones or Will Grier or Kyler Murray, or they trade for Josh Rosen or something, I am pretty sold they're going to go get a quarterback. Now, less wide receiver emphasis. They got Golden Tate. I didn't think that was a bad signing. I think that he's solid. He has really good hands. I think he's a good complement to Sterling Shepard, but he's not Odell Beckham, and it's just plain and simple. So Saquon Barkley is going to have a lot more involvement in the offense. He's going to also have a lot more eyes on him in the offense as well. So I just want everybody to keep an eye out for him. I think Saquon Barkley, if you're a fantasy owner, you're going to get him because you know he's going to get touches. But it could be that LaShawn McCoy effect last year where he was a higher rated fantasy prospect. You pick him up and then he can't put up numbers because he's the only effective player on that offense at the time. And then he gets hurt. So just be a little cautious but optimistic. I'm cautious but optimistic for Saquon Barkley. Number 3 is Sam Darnold. They're improving the Jets with new team additions. I've said this multiple times on the show already today, but Kelechi Osemele, C.J. Mosley, Jamison Crowder, some good pickups, effective role play pickups as well for the New York Jets. Gase seems like more of an offensive guy, didn't have a lot to work with down in Miami. So I'm really optimistic to see where Sam Darnold goes, how much he progresses in the second year. I think overall the team's going to improve and win a few more games. Like I said, we still have to see more coming out of the NFL draft. Who are they going to get at number 3? Are they going to trade down? Who's going to do what? There's still a lot of time left between here and the NFL draft. Number 4, Josh Allen. The offensive line as a whole seems to have improved. They went out and got Mitch Morse from the Kansas City Chiefs. He's a really good center. I liked him a lot. And they improved with like Tyler Nishke. They improved with just players all across that offensive line. The depth in the backfield, they went out and got a veteran in Frank Gore. How many miles does Frank Gore have left? It doesn't seem like he's ever going to stop playing football. He's top 5 all-time rushing yards, so why not? LaShawn McCoy and Frank Gore, I think it's a really good tandem in the backfield. You get McCoy, who's a lot more involved in the passing game as well in that offense. You get Gore as a good ground and pound guy who's going to pick up key yards you're going to need. I think Beasley's an improvement at wide receiver, a little bit more secure hands. I think he's better than Kelvin Benjamin overall. So I'm not saying he's the number 1 guy there in Buffalo, but I think he's a better overall addition. And they're sitting at number 9. I wouldn't be surprised if they took a bit of a chance and went up and got DK Metcalf early. I think that's a bit of a reach at 9, but they could add more offensive talent in the NFL draft, of course. Number 5. This guy can only take a big step, because it's Isaiah Wynn. Early in the preseason, I believe, he ended up tearing his Achilles or messing up his ankle somehow. But he's going to be the projected starter at tackle for New England. Like I said, coming off an Achilles injury, he's had an entire season plus to learn under offensive line coach Dante Scarnecchia. I like him. I liked him coming out of Georgia. It's unfortunate he got hurt, but now he's going to be a position where it's either you're going to start and you're going to be the guy we hope you're going to be, or somebody else is going to take your job. That's just how it works in New England. I liked Isaiah Wynn a lot. I think he can work around that offensive line as a whole. So I think he's really ready to take a next big step. I think this year is going to be a big year for him overall. Number 6, Jairi Alexander out of Green Bay. Starting opposite of Kevin King, Adrian Amos was a good addition for them in the back end of that secondary. I think Jairi Alexander was a really strong rookie performer last season. I like him a lot. Really good cover safety, and he's able to cover just about everybody on the field. He's going to develop even more. I like second-year guys. They get to develop more in the NFL offseason as well with guys who are preparing NFL talent even more so. You have that extra year of experience. But it also means guys have extra experience looking at you. Number 7, Darius Leonard. But they got the Indianapolis Colts linebacker, rookie last year. I think he was like a 5th-round pick. I like Darius Leonard's play a lot. He plays fast and hard-nosed football. When they went out and got Justin Houston, allows him to hunt some more. The defense as a whole should improve with other additions in the draft. Justin Houston on a 2-year, $24 million deal is going to help make that defense better. You got Marcus Hunt coming back. You got some key contributors. They stayed relatively quiet considering how much cap space they had, but the Indianapolis Colts next season are going to be an interesting team to watch. And number 8, the final player on this list is Courtland Sutton. He will be the starter in Denver opposite of Emmanuel Sanders unless they go out and do something crazy ambitious. And I think Flacco's a better quarterback than Case Keenum. So he's going to get more playing time. He's a bigger receiver. I think Flacco likes those bigger targets. And I like Sutton coming out of SMU. I think Denver's going to work with him pretty well this upcoming season as a starter. So that was always a projection. They went out and it shows they have a lot of confidence in Courtland Sutton when they traded Demaryius Thomas last season. And now going into this season, he knows he's going to be essentially the number 2 guy behind Emmanuel Sanders. I think that does a lot for the kid's confidence. Let's see what he can do with it. I think he takes a next big step. He's going to have a really good season. So we got one more segment left. We got 8 minutes left of show to cover today. We're going to hit you with a 20-second ad. Finally, I'm going to talk about the Pittsburgh drama. Who to trust? Who's telling the truth? Stick around.
Love it. Your new favorite station.
You like it, I love it. You like it, I love it. This is your man, Flo Rida.
All the hits. The New River Valley's hit station. RFR, Radio Free Radford.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in today here in the Radio Free Radford Studio. I'm your host of the Rines Report, Tristan Blake Rines. I'm also been doing some work with WRAD 1017, 1035, and 1460 New River Radio Group. They do some amazing work. Check them out. The Tim Donnelly Show, of course, from 3 to 6 p.m. They have welcomed me in as an intern, and they've done a lot of great work with me. So I gotta spread some of the love, gotta share some of the love with them, and show some appreciation, I guess is what I'm getting at. So Pittsburgh, the drama and who to trust. There's been a lot coming out this past few years, of all sorts of drama, and I don't like diving too much into this stuff if I can help it, but I felt like it was an interesting thing to look at. Now, I don't like saying this, but I honestly think Bell and Brown might have been the ones spurning a lot of the drama in Pittsburgh. And now that they're gone, I think Pittsburgh as a whole is going to be a little bit more, I don't know. I think they're going to be a little bit more cohesive as a group. I don't think there's going to be as much noise coming out of Pittsburgh this upcoming season. I think Tomlin's going to have a better handle on the locker room. I understand that Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell are super talented guys and probably some of the best of their position in the NFL. They are some of the best of their position in the NFL. But, with the whole contract stuff for like an entire season plus in Pittsburgh with Le'Veon Bell, that created some drama. Antonio Brown voicing how unhappy he was there, and he was very critical of Ben Roethlisberger. I think that it could very well have been Bell and Brown. You got guys like Mike Pouncey and Raymond Foster, both offensive linemen that have come to Big Ben's defense via Instagram. There have been lots of drama in the locker room, like I said. Live videos after victories and looking too far ahead in the NFL playoffs. Last year, prior to Super Bowl 52, Le'Veon Bell was talking about how they were looking to New England. They didn't even consider Jacksonville a threat, and they ended up getting smacked in their own home stadium. And that was according to Le'Veon Bell looking ahead. Antonio Brown and Bell seemed to alienate themselves from the team, and they were very critical of Big Ben Roethlisberger. They were critical of Mike Tomlin. Now, I'm not saying there's because we don't know for sure what these conversations were like. We have no idea exactly what was going on in the Steelers locker room. We have no idea. But it seems like a decent amount of this criticism has been coming from these guys who didn't want to be there anymore or were unhappy with one thing or another. But if there have now recently been players coming out and, defending Big Ben and, voicing that the issues weren't because of Big Ben, they were because of these players. So I think it's something to consider. Do I think the Steelers can be better this year? Absolutely. Do I think they could be worse this year? I still think there's a chance they're going to be worse this year because of the loss of talent. They seem to have a good running back, and they seem to have a steady offense running behind James Conner. I liked him a lot. He was a Pro Bowler. All due respect to him. I really like James Conner as a character. And Juju Smith-Schuster is an interesting guy to follow. Funny guy on social media as well. But there's lots to cover here that is just so underneath the surface. And I think I need to stop saying that all the time. I think that this isn't all Big Ben's fault. This isn't all Mike Tomlin's fault. I think that it's fair to be critical of Tomlin for not having a handle on this drama and letting it seep into the media. I think it's a little bit of a fair criticism. But I also feel that, it's not entirely all their fault either. You have guys with such big personalities, and there's nothing wrong with having a personality. Like I said, I've always defended guys, and I understand where these guys are coming from some of the time. But I also feel that it's responsible of us to think, okay, if these are the only two guys really coming out and saying these things, is it that they are separating themselves from the group and they're being extra critical? I understand Pittsburgh has plenty of its own drama consistently, but I just wanted to take a quick moment to spotlight that. Do I think the Steelers are going to have a good season this year? I think they could probably squeak into the playoffs this year. I have no doubts about that. At the very least, squeak into the playoffs. The Browns are going to be interesting to watch in that division. Ben Roethlisberger is going to be Ben Roethlisberger. As long as he can stay upright in that pocket, they're going to do just fine. So that's about it. Thank you guys so much for sticking around for the entire hour today. We unfortunately didn't get a chance to have Terrence Schofield on the show, but we were broadcasting live the entire time here on Facebook Live. Give us a follow. Give us a like on Facebook Live when you search The Rines Report. R-I-N-E-S is how you spell Rines. Follow Radio Free Radford on social media at Radio Free Raddy on Twitter and on Instagram and Facebook when you search Radio Free Radford. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I want you all to have a safe and wonderful weekend out in Radford land or wherever you're listening from. Thank you so much for your time today, and have a wonderful and safe weekend. I'm going to play you guys out with this ad.
We're back, and better than ever. Radio Free Radford.
Ready? Realize what I'm about to say.
Come on! Go! Playing what you want to hear. RFR.
I am Ellie Goldie.
Hey everybody, this is Natalie Laro.
Hey, what's up? It's Brianna.
What up, y'all? This is Jeremiah.
Radford's new choice of music. RadioFreeRadford.com.